So it's been about 3 years since the release of Yu-Gi-Oh's most recent summoning mechanic, Link Monsters. And I figured with Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's on the horizon, I'd do a little retrospective on Konami's arguably worst summoning mechanic. Link Monsters, for those of you who may not know, are the most recent extra deck type monster that Konami introduced back in March of 2017. The first three being Link Spider, Honeybot, and Decode Talker that came out in that one starter deck back in 2017. Links were incredibly unique for a few reasons. They didn't have defense points, and they had link numbers equal to the amount of arrows that they had on them. So, to summon Link monsters, you would sacrifice 2 or more monsters, unless it was a Link 1 or states specifically otherwise. Or if it was a Link 2 or higher, you could just sacrifice another Link monster and a regular monster or token to summon the bigger Link monster. For example, you could sacrifice a Decode Talker and a regular monster or token to summon Firewall Dragon. Boom. Easy. Simple. Oh yeah, and the simple fact that an entire Master Rule update came with their introduction. Or as I like to call it, the thing that turned me off from Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, the Master Rule came with a few new updates and rules. 1. You couldn't summon extra deck monsters, fusions, synchros, or exceeds directly to the field anymore. Oh no! Konami added the brilliant new Extra Monster Zone, which was the 6th monster card zone exclusively for any monsters that were coming out of the extra deck. Number 2, this included face-up pendulum monsters that were sent there during a duel instead of being sent to the graveyard. And the only way to summon those extra deck monsters into the main monster zones was if you had a Link monster with arrows pointing to them, which opened them up, making those main monster zones now extra monster zones so long as a Link monster arrow pointed to it. If the Link monster was destroyed, but there was an extra deck monster still there, the extra deck monster could stay, but if that extra deck monster got destroyed, that extra monster zone now became another main monster zone that you couldn't summon stuff into as long as there wasn't a Link arrow pointing to it. I know why Konami did this. The game up to this point, from around 2015 to early 2017, was a fast, balls off the walls, badlands of a game where Pendulums just dominated. Hell, this was the first time I ever had to experience an emergency ban list. Looking at you, Pepes, you know what you did. Pepes, you know what you did. You ruined the game that I love! Pendulums were most definitely a problem. And I mean, I may have contributed to said problem, but that's neither here nor there. My point is, Konami knew Pendulums weren't going to slow down unless they did something major. So back to my original point. Links brought with them the promise and chance to slow down the game and slow down those extra deck heavy archetypes that were dominating the playstyle of the game. You guys know what I'm talking about. I used to play Pendulums, and the fact that turn 1 I could get out a rank 8, level 7, and like level 8 fusion synchro and exceed monster at turn 1 is pretty disgusting. In fact, Pendulum monsters no longer had exclusive zones anymore thanks to this new Master Rule update. They had to be placed in the spell and trap zones on the farthest left and farthest right sides. Perfect, you know? That limits Pendulum decks to not having too much back row support, you know? They can deal with that. Cool. Work done. Everyone at the Konami board meeting is all happy and they've moved on. We've tackled the issue at hand. But, You know, I like to say this one thing where it's called Yu-Gi-Oh! Players find a way, and find a way they did. You'd think theoretically that Link monsters were going to slow down the game, but Aside from that, and aside from Yu-Gi-Oh players, again, finding a way, there was one itty-bitty teensy little problem that I also had with Link monsters. You had to run them. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, in the past, any new summoning mechanic, be it fusions, synchros, or exceeds, did not require anyone to play them in order to keep up. Yes, those decks introduced in those eras that took advantage of those summoning mechanics were topping, were good decks, were going to get you wins at a locals or at a tournament, of course. But you could still play other decks that didn't require them, or splash in exceed monsters to previous decks. That was an option for you. Links inherently made it to where if you needed to play a deck that had any sort of extra deck support, you needed a good majority of Link monsters to use that extra deck support. And, okay, number one, yeah, I don't have to play with Link monsters, because I'm sure some of you are sitting there going, "But Alec, if you don't like Links, don't play them." But yeah, no, that's true. I get it. That's valid. Yeah. But you know what I do like playing? Speedroids, Light Sworns, and every other non-meta, non-pendulum deck that I used that also relied on extra deck support. And yes, at the time of this video, there are 1 or 2 Link monsters for not only those archetypes I mentioned, but for other ones as well. But that again brings up my original point. Konami realized, well, we took care of the pendulum problem, but we didn't really take into account, I don't know, everyone else who uses an extra deck. Toss them 1 or 2 Link monsters, that'll be alright. And look, I know at the end of the day, Konami is a business and they just want to push out their new product and want people to buy more packs, more boxes, more tins for the newer cards to play with, the newer archetypes that are going to be relevant. I get it, but they've done that in the past as well. People were still buying new product even when you didn't have to play the new summoning mechanics. Granted, if you wanted to keep up with an older deck, or if you wanted to use an older archetype, you had to splash in the staple exceed monster here or there that cost you about $100 or more. But I digress. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game near and dear to my heart that I've been playing for about 15 years. And never in my time playing did a change or new mechanic ever drive me away for much longer than Links did. And I think that's saying something. I have a very compulsive and obsessive personality. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is what I dumped most of my money in for like 2 years, and the fact that Links turned me off is astounding to me, because when Pendulums came out, I thought to myself, this is weird, this is not Yu-Gi-Oh! What is this? And then I ran Pepe's and Pendulum Magicians for a long time. I didn't want to touch Links, except also the 1 week I caved in and bought 3 copies of the Salaman Great Structure deck, but let's not talk about that. My point is, Konami made a big change that, at least for me, felt isolating and really big businessy and scummy. However, there is hope. As some of you may or may not know, Konami is updating the Master Rule come April 1st, 2020. An awful date to be sure, but that aside, this update will allow us to summon fusions, synchros, and exceed monsters into the main monster zones without needing Link monsters. And I gotta tell you, when I saw this update, I couldn't help but just think, yes! Yes! So who knows? Maybe my hiatus from this game will be coming to an end and I'll start playing with physical cards again, but until then, stay golden everybody, and have a damn good one.